Have you ever felt uncomfortable when visitors come to your home, even if they are familiar faces, and deep inside you just wish they would leave soon so you could return to your quiet sanctuary? Have you ever been labeled as cold or distant simply because you don't always enjoy chatting, smiling, or entertaining others the way society seems to expect? And have you ever asked yourself, what's wrong with me, when most people seem to thrive in company while you feel exhausted and drained by it? These feelings are not rare, yet they are often misunderstood. Many carry this unease for years, believing there is something odd or even flawed within them. But Carl Jung, the great pioneer of depth psychology, suggested otherwise. He believed that such seemingly small reactions are not flaws at all, but subtle signals from the soul. Behind the discomfort when guests arrive, behind the urge to retreat into your own world, lies a deeper psychic structure where concepts like introversion, persona, and the shadow quietly operate to protect your inner energy. We live in a world where openness, constant connection, and sociability are celebrated as virtues. Modern culture often praises extroversion, being active, talkative, and socially adaptable, as the ideal personality type. Meanwhile, the need for silence, the desire to be alone, or the discomfort with having visitors is easily dismissed as antisocial or negative. Yet Jung's insight was radically different. These tendencies are not deficiencies. They are fingerprints of the soul, unique patterns of energy that deserve to be honored, not suppressed. Think back to a typical day in your own life. Perhaps you've spent hours at work in meetings, surrounded by people, responding to endless questions and demands. When evening comes, a colleague or even a family friend unexpectedly stops by. They bring their stories and cheer, but instead of joy, you feel heaviness descend. You politely engage, but inwardly you yearn for the moment they leave so you can be alone again. Is this selfishness? Or is it simply your soul whispering that it has given enough, and now it longs to return to its natural rhythm of restoration? Carl Jung's model of introversion and extroversion was never meant as rigid labels. Rather, they describe the direction of psychic energy. For some, energy naturally flows outward. They draw vitality from the world of people, activity, and external stimulation. For others, energy flows inward. Strength comes from solitude, reflection, and communion with the inner self. This distinction explains why some thrive in social gatherings while others feel depleted after only a short interaction. When we reframe it this way, the discomfort with having visitors is no longer a moral failing, but an expression of orientation. Introverts do not dislike people, they simply recharge in different ways. Just as a lake becomes unsettled by too many waves, the introvert's inner world becomes disturbed by too much external intrusion. Once the ripples fade, peace returns. But if the disturbance is constant, exhaustion sets in. The crucial insight here is that your reactions are not abnormal. They are natural signals pointing to how your energy system is designed. To feel uneasy with visitors does not mean you are broken. It means your psyche is reminding you to protect your balance. And once you understand this, guilt begins to dissolve. You realize, there is nothing wrong with me. My energy simply follows a different rhythm. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Perhaps one of the smallest yet most revealing steps in that journey is acknowledging your own discomfort when others intrude on your inner sanctuary. Far from being shameful, it is a reminder that your individuality is alive and speaking to you. By listening, you begin to honor yourself, rather than forcing your soul into molds it was never meant to fit. The beauty of Jung's perspective is that it opens the door to deeper exploration. If you dislike having visitors, what does that reveal about your shadow? The hidden part of the psyche you do not easily show to others? What does it say about your persona, the social mask you wear to be accepted? And how might these dynamics shape your relationships, your choices, and ultimately your path toward individuation, the process of becoming whole? In this video, we will walk through these questions together. You will discover that your discomfort is not a quirk to be fixed, but a truth to be understood. We will explore how Jung's ideas about introversion, the persona, and the shadow illuminate why you feel the way you do. Along the way, I will invite you to reflect on your own experiences. Times when solitude felt like salvation, times when visitors felt like intrusion, times when silence was more nourishing than words. By the end, you may find a new perspective, that what once seemed like an oddity is actually a message from the deepest part of your being. You may learn to embrace yourself with more compassion and even take pride in the rhythm of your own energy. For it is not abnormality, but uniqueness that makes you who you are. So let us take the first step into Jung's framework. Let us look at introversion and extroversion, not as stereotypes of shy and outgoing, but as living forces shaping the flow of psychic energy. Once you see yourself through this lens, your discomfort with visitors will no longer feel like a flaw. It will feel like a key to self-knowledge. Carl Jung was among the first thinkers to present introversion and extroversion not as superficial personality traits, but as profound orientations of the psyche. To him, these were not boxes to trap people in, but living streams of energy, directions in which the soul naturally flows. And when you understand these currents, you no longer judge yourself for where your energy seeks renewal. You begin to see that the way you are wired is not a defect, but a design. For an introvert, the river of energy flows inward. Strength is drawn from solitude, reflection, imagination, and intimacy with the inner world. Social encounters can be valuable, sometimes even inspiring, but they demand a cost. They pull energy outward, and after too much of it, the introvert feels like a well that has been overdrawn. This is why introverts often long to retreat after visitors leave. It is not disdain for people. It is a return to the spring from which their soul drinks. For an extrovert, the current runs the other way. Their vitality awakens in the presence of others. The buzz of conversation, the stimulation of events, the rhythm of collective life. These are not drains, but charges to their system. They feel most alive when their energy is moving outward, connecting, expressing, engaging. And while they too need moments of rest, the silence of solitude can feel suffocating rather than soothing. Jung emphasized that none of us are purely one or the other. Each soul carries both tendencies, like two poles of the same magnet. But usually, one side leads. One pole defines the natural home base where we recharge. And it is here that many misunderstand themselves. Because society often praises the extroverted style, outgoing, sociable, the life of the party. Introverts may feel inadequate, wondering why they cannot match that rhythm. They might force themselves into constant engagement, only to feel more exhausted and more alienated from who they are. Let me paint a scene. Imagine a woman named Anna. She has a job that requires her to attend meetings, interact with colleagues, and network with clients. On the surface, she does well. She smiles, she contributes, she plays her part. But when the day is done and a co-worker asks, "Want to grab dinner?" she feels a weight sink in her chest. She says yes, fearing it would seem rude to decline. By the time she gets home at night, she feels utterly drained, almost resentful, wondering why something so ordinary left her so exhausted. Now compare her to Michael, her colleague. He spends the same day in meetings, yet when evening comes, he is eager to keep socializing. He thrives on the interaction, feels energized by dinner conversations, and comes home later with a spring still in his step. Two people, same environment, completely different responses. Jung would say, this is not a matter of who is stronger or weaker. It is simply the flow of psychic energy. Anna's energy flows inward, Michael's outward. Neither is superior, but each must learn to honor their natural rhythm if they want to live with balance. And here lies the danger. When we ignore our orientation, we begin to suffer. The introvert who constantly forces themselves into extroverted patterns risks burnout, anxiety, and even depression. The extrovert who isolates themselves against their nature may wither in loneliness and restlessness. Jung's insight frees us from this trap. Once you know where your energy belongs, you can stop forcing yourself into shapes that do not fit. You can begin to design a life that nourishes rather than depletes you. But Jung's teaching goes even deeper. He suggested that introversion and extroversion are not just about personality. They reflect the very way our consciousness relates to reality. The introvert's gaze turns toward the subject, the inner images, thoughts, and feelings. The extrovert's gaze turns toward the object, the external world of people and things. Both perspectives are essential. Too much subjectivity, and one risks losing touch with reality. Too much objectivity, and one risks losing contact with the soul. True health comes from finding a dynamic balance, letting the pendulum swing, but always returning to center. Think about your own life. Do you feel restored after an afternoon alone with a book? Or do you feel restless until you meet friends for coffee? Do visitors leave you inspired, or do they leave you secretly longing for silence? Your answers are not wrong. They are simply reflections of your natural home for energy. And once you acknowledge them, you can begin to live without guilt. You can set boundaries without shame, decline invitations without apology, and create space for yourself without feeling selfish. Jung often reminded us that much of our suffering comes from refusing to live as who we are. We exhaust ourselves wearing masks, pretending to enjoy what drains us, and suppressing the rhythms our soul longs for. But when you honor the flow of your energy, you come closer to authenticity. You begin to feel that your life fits, not because it matches others' expectations, but because it resonates with the truth of your being. This is why understanding introversion and extroversion matters so much. It is not just theory, it is liberation. It is the difference between blaming yourself for feeling wrong and realizing that your discomfort has meaning. It is the freedom to say, I am not broken. My energy flows differently, and that difference is a gift. This realization is a doorway, and Jung invites us to walk further. For behind our orientations lie deeper dynamics, the persona, the mask we wear to adapt to society, and the shadow, the hidden self we keep from others, and often from ourselves. These forces shape why we react the way we do when visitors arrive, why we feel pressure to act in ways that do not align with us, and why social encounters can leave us weary. So let us step through that doorway together. In the next part, we will explore Jung's ideas of the persona and the shadow, how the masks we wear protect us, but also exhaust us, and how the unacknowledged parts of ourselves may whisper in our discomfort when others intrude. By understanding these hidden forces, you may come to see your reactions in a new light, not as random quirks, but as messages from the depths of your psyche. Carl Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When we look deeper into the psyche, beyond the surface of introversion and extroversion, we encounter two of Jung's most profound concepts, the persona and the shadow. These two forces, subtle yet powerful, explain why we often feel drained when hosting visitors, and why the presence of others can stir discomfort in ways we cannot always explain. The persona, from the Latin word meaning mask, is the image we present to the outside world. It is the role we play to fit in, to be accepted, to appear polite, agreeable, or appropriate. The persona is not inherently false or bad. It is necessary for living in society. For example, you may be a naturally quiet person, but when guests arrive, you force a smile, engage in small talk, and perform the rituals of hospitality, even when all you want is silence. In that moment, your persona is at work. But the problem arises when the persona becomes too heavy, too rigid, too constant. When you must wear it for long stretches, you start to forget where the mask ends and you begin. Each time visitors arrive, you are not only engaging with them, but also performing a role, acting as the person you think they expect. And this act, repeated again and again, consumes vast amounts of energy. You are not tired because you dislike people. You are tired because you dislike pretending. On the opposite side lies the shadow, the hidden part of the psyche. The shadow contains all the emotions, impulses, and aspects of ourselves we prefer not to admit, both to others and to ourselves. Perhaps you pride yourself on being kind, but beneath the surface, your shadow holds anger, irritability, selfishness, qualities you repress because you consider them unacceptable. Each time you host visitors, the shadow stirs. While your persona smiles and chats, your shadow grumbles in the dark. I'm tired. I don't want this. The tension between what you display and what you suppress creates an inner split, and the result is deep exhaustion. Picture this familiar scene. You come home after a long day. Your mind is weary. Your body craves rest. You want nothing more than to sit quietly, perhaps read or simply breathe in silence. But suddenly, the doorbell rings. Unexpected guests. You open the door, smile, offer drinks, sit with them, and maintain conversation. Outwardly, everything appears fine, yet inwardly, your shadow is whispering, I can't do this. I just want to be alone. Persona and shadow collide. One side forces the mask, the other resists, straining beneath the surface. When the guests finally leave, what remains is not joy, but a bone-deep fatigue. Jung believed that health comes not from denying either persona or shadow, but from recognizing both. The persona has its place. It allows us to function socially, to navigate the collective world. But if we identify with it entirely, we lose authenticity. The shadow, too, cannot be eliminated. If we deny it, it sneaks out in passive-aggressive comments, in irritation, in sudden outbursts. But if we acknowledge it, if we allow ourselves to hear its voice without judgment, it becomes less of a monster and more of a messenger. Often, people fail to realize that their exhaustion is not from the presence of others, but from the burden of performance. It is not the guest that drains you. It is the act of being someone you are not. If you allowed yourself to be more honest, by declining visits when you are tired, by showing your fatigue rather than masking it, you might find that you feel less depleted. The real issue is not company itself, but the distance between your inner truth and your outer mask. And when you dare to acknowledge the shadow, something shifts. Instead of condemning yourself for feeling irritated, you accept, I am tired and I need silence. That is natural. In this way, the shadow is no longer an enemy, but an ally, delivering honest feedback about your state. Jung's invitation was not to destroy the shadow, but to integrate it, so that the parts of ourselves we once feared could become sources of strength. The same applies to the persona. A healthy persona is like a light mask. flexible, worn when needed, but easy to remove. An unhealthy persona is like armor that never comes off. When you host guests, ask yourself, are you wearing the mask lightly, or has it fused to your skin? Are you pretending so hard that you have forgotten what authenticity feels like? The fatigue you feel with visitors, then, is not a mystery. It is the cost of dissonance, the energy required to maintain a mask while suppressing the shadow. The more those two forces pull apart, the greater the strain on your psyche. The path to relief lies not in rejecting people, but in closing the gap between your inner reality and your outer expression. This is why Jung urged us to embrace both light and dark, mask and shadow. To live wholly is not to discard these forces, but to harmonize them. When you learn to let your persona be thinner and your shadow be acknowledged, you no longer crumble under the weight of visits. You can be present without overacting, honest without being rude. The energy you once wasted on pretending can now be used for authentic connection. So, the next time you feel irritated by visitors, pause and ask, is it truly them, or is it the role you are forcing yourself to play? Is it the guest or the mask? By asking such questions, you reclaim your power. You realize that your discomfort is not a flaw. It is a message from your soul urging you to return to balance. And here lies a profound truth. You do not always need to wear the mask. You are allowed to be yourself. And that need for authenticity does not make you weak. It makes you real. In the next part, we will meet one of Jung's most evocative archetypes, the hermit. This figure embodies the power of solitude, not as emptiness, but as a sacred state of being. By understanding the hermit archetype, we will see why solitude can be nourishment rather than deprivation, why silence can be healing rather than lonely, and how embracing this archetype leads us closer to individuation, the process of becoming whole. Among Jung's many contributions to psychology, his idea of archetypes, universal patterns of the collective unconscious, stands as one of the most profound. Archetypes are timeless images, symbols, and roles that appear across cultures and myths, shaping human behavior and guiding the soul's development. One of these archetypes, often overlooked yet deeply relevant to the question of visitors and solitude, is the hermit. The hermit archetype appears in countless traditions. In Christian imagery, the desert fathers retreated to caves seeking God in silence. In Taoist tradition, sages wandered into the mountains to live among streams and rocks. In Hinduism, the sannyasin renounced worldly ties to pursue liberation. Even in fairy tales, the wise old man or woman is often found alone in a forest hut, removed from society but carrying profound insight. These images echo the same truth. Solitude is not merely absence of people, it is presence of depth. For Jung, the hermit archetype symbolizes the soul's instinct to withdraw, not out of fear or rejection, but out of necessity for inner growth. Just as a seed must rest in the dark soil before it can sprout, the psyche must retreat into solitude to germinate new life. This is why your discomfort with constant visitors may be more than a personality quirk. It may be your soul's way of honoring the hermit within, a call to reclaim silence so that something deeper can unfold. Think of how modern life often treats solitude. It is equated with loneliness, suspicion, even failure. The person who dines alone is pitied. The one who chooses a quiet weekend over a crowded party is seen as antisocial. Yet these judgments reveal more about society's discomfort with silence than about solitude itself. The hermit archetype reminds us that solitude is not emptiness. It is fullness of another kind. It is the space where the psyche listens to itself without interruption. Consider this. When was the last time you sat in silence without a phone, without background music, without conversation? At first, silence feels awkward, like an absence to be filled. But stay with it, and something shifts. Thoughts rise like waves and settle. Emotions you buried come forward, asking to be acknowledged. Ideas, long forgotten, emerge from the depths. In silence, you begin to hear the subtle voice of your own soul. This is the hermit's gift. Jung understood individuation, the process of becoming whole, as a journey that often requires withdrawal. The hermit archetype guides us into the inner cave where transformation happens. Without solitude, we risk being swallowed by the collective, losing ourselves in endless roles, masks, and demands. With solitude, we return to center, rediscover what is uniquely ours, and reconnect to the timeless patterns that shape meaning. Let's imagine a simple example. Sarah, a young professional, feels constantly drained. Her life is filled with meetings, dinners, social obligations, and visits from friends. She fears saying no, so she accepts every invitation. Yet she notices that she grows resentful, irritable, even physically unwell. One weekend, she decides to stay home alone. She cooks a quiet meal, reads, and walks in the park without company. At first, guilt gnaws at her. Shouldn't she be more social? But as the hours pass, she feels her body relax, her mind clear. By Sunday evening, she feels alive again. What happened? She honored the hermit within. She allowed solitude to restore her soul. The hermit archetype also reminds us that solitude is not isolation from others, but connection to the deeper layers of life. In solitude, we commune with nature, with dreams, with memory, with the unconscious itself. Mystics across ages sought solitude not to escape humanity, but to touch what is beyond humanity. And when they returned, they often brought wisdom that nourished their communities. The hermit is not selfish. The hermit is generative. This perspective can help you reframe your own discomfort with visitors. Perhaps it is not that you dislike them, but that their presence interrupts a sacred process. Perhaps your soul is asking for the cave, the quiet, the sacred space where you can simply be. And perhaps by honoring that call, you do not only restore yourself, you also bring back a clearer, more authentic self to your relationships. Jung often spoke of the tension between opposites. The hermit archetype doesn't mean abandoning society forever. It means cultivating rhythm, moving outward into the world and then inward into solitude, like breathing. Too much solitude, and you risk isolation. Too much social interaction, and you risk dissipation. Balance is life. The hermit simply ensures that the inward breath is not neglected. Think of the natural world. The tides rise and fall. Seasons alternate between growth and rest. Even the heart contracts and expands. Why should the psyche be any different? When you withdraw into solitude, you are not being abnormal. You are aligning with the deepest rhythms of existence. You are joining the hermit's ancient wisdom, that silence is fertile and that darkness is the cradle of new light. So the next time you feel drained by visitors, remember, it is not weakness. It may be the hermit archetype calling you home. It is your soul's way of saying, I need silence to hear myself again. Honoring that need is not selfish. It is essential. This brings us to a profound shift in perspective. Solitude, far from being a problem, is a teacher. And by respecting the hermit within, you move closer to individuation, the wholeness Jung saw as life's ultimate goal. In the next and final part, we will bring everything together. We will reflect on what it means to accept your nature, to integrate persona and shadow, to honor the hermit, and to live without shame for who you are. And along the way, I will invite you to take one step for yourself, to embrace your rhythm, to comment on what resonates with you, and to subscribe so that you continue this journey of self-discovery. For the path to wholeness is not walked in a single moment. It is a circle, a rhythm, a lifelong unfolding. We have traveled far together, beginning with something that may have seemed trivial at first. The discomfort you feel when visitors arrive. Yet, as Carl Jung revealed, even the smallest reactions often open doors to the deepest truths of the soul. Behind that simple discomfort lies an entire structure of psychic life. The way your energy flows inward or outward, the masks you wear to be accepted, the shadow you try to keep hidden, and the ancient call of the hermit archetype inviting you back into silence. In the beginning, we looked at introversion and extroversion, not as shallow stereotypes of shy or outgoing, but as profound orientations of energy. Some souls draw vitality from others. Some must return to solitude to be restored. Jung's insight showed us that there is no right or wrong here, only different rhythms of life. We then explored the persona and the shadow, the mask you wear for society and the darker self you hide away. These two forces are not enemies, but they do create tension. When you host visitors, the persona smiles and entertains, while the shadow mutters in silence, "I am tired. I need to be alone." The exhaustion that follows is not from people themselves, but from the distance between the mask you wear and the truth you suppress. To recognize both persona and shadow is to soften that distance, to live with less strain, and to be more authentic. Finally, we encountered the hermit archetype, an image found in every culture, from monks in desert caves to sages in mountain forests. The hermit reminds us that solitude is not emptiness, but fullness of another kind. Like a seed in dark soil, the soul requires silence to grow. To withdraw is not to abandon life. It is to prepare to re-enter it with greater wisdom and clarity. When we bring these pieces together, the discomfort of visitors no longer seems strange. It is instead a message. It is your psyche saying, protect your energy. Honor your rhythm. Listen to the call of your inner hermit. And here is the strong affirmation I want you to carry with you from this journey. There is nothing wrong with me. I simply need to live in harmony with the natural rhythm of my energy. That affirmation is not just a comfort, it is a key. It releases guilt, removes shame, and frees you to live as you truly are. My friend, if you have found this journey meaningful, I warmly invite you to subscribe to this channel. Together, we will continue exploring Jung's wisdom and the insights of ancient and modern thought, weaving them into reflections that illuminate both mind and soul. This is not merely a channel to listen passively, it is a circle of growth, a place where self-understanding deepens week by week. And now, I want to invite you to pause and reflect. Have you ever felt uneasy when visitors came, or sensed that being alone was not weakness, but nourishment? If so, I encourage you to share that experience in the comments below. Not to impress others, not to prove a point, but simply as an act of gratitude to yourself, for listening, for valuing your truth, for honoring your own needs. Sometimes, writing your reflection is itself an act of integration, a way of saying, yes, this is who I am, and it is enough. Remember, sharing here is not about pleasing anyone else. It is about affirming yourself. By putting your words into the world, you strengthen the bond between inner and outer, between the silent voice of your soul and the life you live every day. Before we close, let me remind you once more. If this video has touched your heart, if it has helped you see yourself with more clarity, subscribe to this channel and continue the journey. For the path of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole, is not a straight line. It is a circle, a rhythm, a return. Each time you come back, you discover a new depth, a new truth, a new layer of your soul waiting to be known. Thank you for listening until the very end. May you always honor your solitude, embrace both your light and your shadow, and walk with the courage to live in harmony with your own rhythm.